Hello, everyone, and welcome to Climate Literacy, the first step in climate action, a webinar hosted by Codo Advisory to help raise awareness of the need for corporations to understand climate change and the tools available to support them in this endeavor. I am Minami Shinohara, a sustainability consultant with Codo Advisory and the MC for today's event. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping points. During the webinar, if you have questions at any time, please put them in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please submit your questions at any time throughout the event. We will have a Q&A session with the presenters at the end of the event. If you have a question directed towards a specific presenter, please address the questions when you write it so we know who to ask to answer during the panel. If you have a technical issue, please just ask in the general chat and one of our support staff will help you. Now that housekeeping is out of the way, we have a fantastic lineup of presenters, including academics, tool providers, and companies who have seen the effect of these tools firsthand. Here to talk with us today about the importance of climate literacy for corporations, we are pleased to have Dr. Kim Schumacher, Associate Professor in Sustainable Finance and ESG at Kyushu University. He has recently returned to Japan after presenting his work on competency greenwashing throughout Europe. In order to accommodate our linguistically diverse audience, we have asked Dr. Schumacher to prepare a video in advance.
Dear participants, my name is Kim Schumacher, Associate Professor at Kyushu University in Japan. And it is my pleasure today to talk at Codo Advisory's event for Earth Day 2023, and especially since the topic on climate literacy and how it represents a first step in climate action is very close to my research and the work that I do every day in terms of exploring and investigating the relevance of sustainability and environment-related skill sets and expertise. So to provide a little bit of context, because this webinar is about the importance of education, and in my research, I talk about a topic called competence greenwashing. What are we actually talking about? So with now investing, business, everything is in terms of is now taking into account sustainability and climate change. And when doing so, that means that now businesses have to pay attention to things that for many decades, they had only little attention or that had only little importance. And by doing so, that also means that the people working for companies and for corporations, for governments, for regulators, they now need to also become skilled. They need to become more aware, and they also need to develop expertise over time to properly manage, integrate, and ideally achieve sustainability and mitigate, for example, greenhouse gas emissions, which is one of the main contributors to anthropogenic climate change. So that also means that we need expert level knowledge. And one of the things that I talk about in competence greenwashing, it means that we need to look very carefully at the relevance, at the materiality of skills, because one of the things that I have observed in my research is that expert does not automatically mean expert. So let's say, for example, the finance sector, where we have sustainable finance and ESG investing. So an ESG, an investment strategy that takes into account environmental, social, and governance factors, which includes climate change and ideally the mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions. So a lot of people in the finance sector have traditionally held backgrounds more from a business with business backgrounds, for example, business education, professional track records that were more business aligned, be it management, be it communications, be it finance. or accounting. And people with those skill sets, they do not necessarily are climate experts or environmental experts, and they don't need to be. However, now, since there's a lot of pressure from society, but also from governments and also even from investors, from very activist investors, to become more sustainable or to reduce their carbon footprints, that also means that the people working for companies, be it, for example, fund managers or investment bankers, they now are also tasked with trying to reduce the carbon footprint of their portfolios, or, for example, take into account certain metrics such as greenhouse gas emissions or biodiversity in order to improve the sustainability footprint overall of their portfolios. And with that specific knowledge, a lot of more traditionally trained finance or investment management practitioners, they cannot become climate experts or environmental experts overnight. But what I've been observing is that a lot of companies, under the pressure from society, from governments, from investors, they want to present a very advanced, a very progressive view in terms of sustainability of themselves. They want to show that they're sustainability leaders. And with that, there's also pressure for the practitioners to also show that they have superior sustainability skills. But not all education, not all skills, not all expertise is created equal, because one of the key things is the knowledge, the expertise needs to be material. It needs to be relevant. So just doing a quick online certificate that lasts about 1 week or that lasts about a weekend, that will not make you a climate expert. That will not make you a sustainability expert. It is very important that you do it, especially for practitioners who did not have a long background or like knowledge of sustainability concepts, or, for example, around climate change. But it is very important to acknowledge that you don't become an expert in like less than 100 hours, which some of these certificates require. It takes time. But where these certificates are very important, where foundational education is very important, is to create bridges, to establish more links between the actual expert, the actual environmental experts, biodiversity experts, climate change experts, sustainability experts, who have the proper subject matter expertise, who have for years studied and researched, for example, about climate change, about the atmosphere, about ecosystems, about biodiversity, and to work with them together in order to make businesses and financial institutions, investment practices more sustainable, and ideally also improve overall climate action, reduce our carbon footprints, reduce the carbon footprints of supply chains. So that is why I think climate literacy and education are extremely important. But one of the things that all the participants today need to know is there is no shortcut to expertise. You cannot become an expert overnight in terms of sustainability, climate change, or environmental issues. And that is where competence greenwashing is very important, because it needs to be genuine expertise. As I said, all knowledge has value, but not all expertise is material depending on the context. And with that, I want to leave you with one small example at the end before I leave it to the other participants and the other speakers, is if, for example, on a plane, one of the passengers faints, and then the flight attendants ask, is there a doctor on the plane? And then one of the people raises their hand and says, I have a doctorate in history. That is very well true. That person is technically a doctor, but that skill, having a doctorate in history, might not be the most relevant in that specific context. So if another person then raises their hand and says, I'm a medical doctor, that is also a doctor, but that skill set might be much more relevant for that specific context. And that is where it is very important to also have webinars like today's, where we learn about education, we learn about the offer, we learn about the support systems, to become more educated, but also to realize what are the limits in terms of becoming an expert or acquiring additional knowledge in certain subject matter areas. And then also being given the tools, learning about where can I go if I come to a certain limit? Where can I reach out to certain experts? And I think that is very important in terms of not only sustainability issues, but especially for climate action, because it is extremely urgent that we address it. And I hope that today's webinar will also provide you more information on that. Thank you very much for having been able to speak. And then I hope you have an excellent continuation of the webinar. Thank you very much. And please do reach out if you have any additional questions online or via email. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Schumacher. With such compelling reasons, it is very clear that we need to ensure a solid understanding of climate change and sustainability all the way from our board members and C-suite through to the employees implementing sustainability initiatives. Let's have a quick poll. Where do you think your company's climate literacy is right now? That's the question from us, and we open the poll right now, so feel free to answer. You can choose one of the answers from poll. And let's wait until we get some answers. Okay, so now we have some answers. And is it? Okay. So, okay, we have majority on some understanding, but not quite expertise. Yes, I think that's okay. And the others are okay. Hopefully, some of the following solutions can help to improve your understanding of climate change and also sustainability. Okay, let's move on to the speakers. To help us achieve the vital goal of understanding our company's climate impact and the climate's impact on our company, we have a number of representatives here today to share their climate literacy solutions. Each solution fits different needs. As you listen, please take into consideration your own company, which tool is best suited towards your current situation, current sustainability needs. The first solution presented today will be a workshop with over 1 million participants worldwide based on IPCC report called Climate Fresk. Louise, I leave further introduction to you.
Hi, everyone. So thank you, Minami, for the introduction. So my name is Louise, and I am the coordinator for Climate Fresk in Japan. So can we please move to the next slide? Thank you. So let me present what the Climate Fresk is. So the Climate Fresk is a scientific workshop which is based on the IPCC report. So a short reminder of the IPCC report, but it is a report that is written by scientists of all over the world that gathers knowledge about climate change and its causes. So the aim of our workshop is to raise awareness about climate change. And how do we do that? So to do that, we have the main element is a deck of 42 cards. And each card represents an element, a component of climate change. And the aim is that all of the participants all together find the connections between each of the cards. So it creates cohesion through collective intelligence. It really depends. So it's really a work of all the participants together. So it is collaborative, creative, and fun. But in addition to the card part, we also have a discussion part. And this is how all together we generate the desire to act to all participants. So we have two different versions of the card. We have higher education version, which is the most classical one, so which lasts for 3 hours. And we have another one dedicated to younger public, so secondary schools mainly, and that lasts from 2 hours to 3 hours. To do the workshop, we have a group from 4 to 7 participants so that everyone can speak. And one facilitator can have from 1 to 2 groups at the same time. Here I just need to specify that Codo Advisory, they provide the workshop and they do that mainly for companies, whereas in Climate Fresk, we do that for different publics. So we do that for general publics, companies, but also universities, etc. So we are working on different things, but Codo Advisory do that for companies especially. Can we move to the next slide, please? So this is the flow of the workshop. We have 4 different phases. The 2 first are focus on the card game. So the first phase is about understanding all of the science behind climate change. And the second phase is about anchoring the knowledge by creativity, expression, and cohesion. Then the third phase is about sharing emotions. And this is really important because the content of the cards and the content of the knowledge might be difficult to admit or difficult to assimilate. And then the fourth phase is about taking actions and debriefing. So this is the most important part when it comes to taking actions. By the way, we do not only do online, we do not only do in person, we also do that online. So we have also 2 different tools. Can we move to the last slide, please? So in short, if you look at the 6 logos on the left side, the Climate Fresk workshop is playful, it is a game. It is also creative, we encourage creativity. It is collaborative, of course, because it's the knowledge of all of the participants. It is very simple, we only need the cards, a sheet of paper, and some pencils. Yeah. It is very visual because of all of the cards and the simplicity of it, but still is scientific. It is scientific. It is on a scientific base. And now if we move on the right side of the slide. So we just hit 1 million participants all over the world on the 5th of April, including 800 in Japan. And there are more than 45,000 participants all over the world. Sorry, I'm confusing the words. 45,000 trained facilitators all over the world. And it is represented in more than 130 countries and has been translated into 45 languages, including Japanese. But what's important there is that we don't only translate the cards, we also adapt to the country. So in each country, the workshop is adapted so that everyone can participate in the country easily. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Climate Fresk really is well suited to understanding the cause and consequences of climate change. Taking the next step from that, let's hear how 2 tones helps groups to understand both the individual and collective actions they can take to reduce their contribution to climate change. Gabriel, I leave it to you.
Yes, thank you, Minami-san, and hi, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. Just to introduce myself a bit, so I am Gabriel Chevallier. I lived in Japan for 3 years in the past, but now I'm working in France for 2 tons. Next, please. So, okay. So Louise just explained about the Climate Fresk and how it is a great tool to understand that climate change is a global issue and that it is urgent to start a transition toward low carbon society. but most of the time, understanding the problem is not enough to take action. Why? Because in our experience, people or organizations, they can feel lost. They don't know which way they should take to make a transition, and also they can feel discouraged because they feel they are alone and that they don't have enough power to change something. And these feelings, of course, they are natural, but they are stopping people from acting, and which makes the transition more difficult and slower. Next, please. So our missions as students is to guide people who feel lost and to encourage people that are alone and show them that they can take action to accelerate the transition. And how do we do this? We provide them with an immersive and playful experience with two main objectives. The first one is to give the participants orders of magnitudes so that they understand the impact of different sectors and what are the main levers to reduce it. And the second objective is to offer them a positive experience so that they feel empowered and they develop their own way, their own will to take action. Next, please. So more concretely, what is Tutans? It's a workshop. It has been inspired by the Climate Fresk. So it's a serious game, and it's going to last 3 hours, same as the Climate Fresk. And you're going to need a group of 6 to 15 participants, plus one person to be facilitator. It can be organized face-to-face or online. Next, please. And so it was inspired by the Climate Fresk, but the purpose of 2 tons is to understand the amount of carbon that we emit in the atmosphere, individually and collectively, and to understand how we can take action to reduce this carbon footprint. To give you an idea, in 2018, the average carbon footprint of a Japanese citizen was roughly around 11 tons of CO2 equivalent per year. And in order to reach carbon neutrality in 2050, an average human being in 2050 should emit no more than 2 tons of CO2 equivalent per year. So we need to divide by more than 5 the amount of greenhouse gases that we emit every year. So how do we do this? Next, please. So first, before the workshop, we're going to ask you to calculate your individual carbon footprint on our platform. And then during the workshop, you're going to play the game, which is a simulation based on scientific data, and which is going to allow you to explore the future until 2050. And during 8 rounds of game, you're going to decide with the other participants what kind of actions you want to take. You will have to choose individual actions that you can take at your own level, but also collective actions to experiment the role of businesses and governments. And you will be able also to take actions to influence the rest of the population in order to reach the tipping point when the whole society is involved in the transition. Next, please. At the end of each round, you're going to visualize in real time the effect of your decisions on the carbon footprints, and you will identify the actions that have the biggest impact. So little by little, you're going to develop a holistic approach on the ecological transition, and you will be ready to take action in real life. Next, please. Oh, okay, there is. Okay, anyway, so if I summarize the main messages of the workshop, it's that the sustainable transition is absolutely necessary, but it is also possible. There is a way to reach our goals, and most importantly, it's desirable and it's full of opportunity. Next, please. Okay, next, yeah, again, next. Yes, thank you. So now more than 60,000 people have participated in Tutan's workshop so far, and it's increasing very fast. It's actually almost hard for us to follow the rhythm because, like in France, every day 3 to 5 companies they come to us because they want to organize a Tutan's workshop, and we're a small team. But it's really like Tutans is actually very convenient for the companies who want to be more educated about climate change, and it's a great help for them to define their strategy towards a low carbon society. Next, please. So yeah, thank you very much, and please don't hesitate to ask questions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Gabriel. Action is truly key. Did you realize that our daily choices can be a form of climate actions? My CO2 is a tool that helps us to understand our individual carbon footprint and see what choices we can change to reduce it. Adrien, if you would.
Thank you, Minami-san. I'm glad to be here today to introduce my CO2 here in Japan. So my name is Adrien Pichon. I'm living in Japan for the past 10 years, and I'm very glad that my CO2 is now available in Japanese for Japanese people. So what is my CO2? My CO2 is an interactive conference that aims to raise awareness and involve employees and people on climate change. Basically, it is an online formulaire, a questionnaire that participants are following and replying following their day-to-day life. So over 1 hour and 30 minutes, accompanied by a facilitator, participants will fill up a questionnaire from their daily routine. From the morning, the day, the evenings, their weekends and holidays, habits, and based on their answers, the questionnaire will calculate their carbon footprint. This is a very playful way of calculating your personal carbon footprint. And most of it is guilt-free approach, meaning that we don't want participants to have a bad feeling about their carbon footprint. Here, the aim is to understand the order of magnitudes of the carbon footprints in your daily life, and while understanding them, being able to change your habits. While it's based in your daily life and like habits, it's also subtle because in the form you can also go very, very deep in the configuration of raw numbers, and so you can also have a very detailed number-based carbon footprint at the end of the workshop. This is done collectively from 1 to 100 people at the same time, so it becomes very convenient for companies to onboard employees in this workshop. Can you go on the next slide, please? Okay, so as you can see here, so my CO2 is very popular. The notation of this workshop is very, very high. And what we focus here is on the personal carbon footprint. So it's very important that people understand that if a company has a carbon neutrality objective, everybody needs to be on board. And so with my CO2, if you're a company, you can invite your employees to join a My CO2 conference to understand better what their carbon footprint is, calculate it, and most importantly, follow it on a yearly basis. One of the key aspects of My CO2 is that through this formula, you can have better decision making, and you can envision what the change you will make on a yearly basis, and come back every year, years after years on the form in order to make your decision and calculate your carbon footprint. So if you want to change your car, for example, you can select it on the form and see really with the numbers what kind of decision would be best in order to reduce your carbon footprint. Now we know it's a complementary approach to everything. That's why my CO2 focuses on the people, while we say it is very important for the companies to also calculate their own carbon footprint. So all in the Climate Fresk, 2 tons, my CO2, and other tools such as those arrive in the complementary position to the effort of a company and of administrations to change their habits in order to reduce the overall emissions over the globe. Can you go on the last slide, please? So here is a quick just note to finish here. We have shown by our studies with Carbon Cap in France that the more people are knowledgeable about climate change, the more impact it has on their personal carbon footprint. That's why education is key, and that's what we want to show through this graph, is that the more you know, the more you are able to act on your carbon footprint and reduce your impact. So please join my CO2 conference, now available in Japan, thanks to Codo Advisory. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrien. Yes, understanding how our daily choices impacts the world at large really is powerful. But sometimes workshops are simply not expansive enough for corporate needs. Our last solution provider will introduce to us AXA Climate School, entire e-learning platform dedicated to teaching your employees about various aspects of sustainability. Shalmalee, please.
Thank you, Minami, and thank you everyone else. I'm happy to be here with the forum today to talk about this important topic about climate literacy and overall what we see at AXA Climate as building a culture of sustainability education. Organizations have a huge role to play in helping society transform towards sustainability. And that is the purpose with which AXA Climate business has come up with scalable solutions that can go beyond a few number of people, just your sustainability team and a few champions, to really scale sustainability education across your entire organization. So I'll talk a little bit about how we do that today. Next slide, please. The purpose and the mission with which we came up with AXA Climate School was to essentially enable organizations to engage and upskill every employee across seniority, across different functional lines, so that they firstly understand the criticality of what is happening behind climate change. And secondly, they have the tool sets to be able to act on it. So the idea is to upskill and engage every employee inside your organization. Next slide, please. One core aspect of our mission in complementing these very important workshops that you have just learned about is being able to do this at scale. Because as you would hear from experts everywhere, urgency is of essence. We need to act fast and we need to act at scale. So what we do at AXA Climate School is essentially work with organizations and think about training thousands and hundreds of thousands of people at the same time. You see some of our corporate customers here on the slide. As you can see, these names cut across different industries. There are players from banking, financial services, consumer goods, professional services, manufacturers, hospitality, and so on and so forth. I'm very proud to share that in working with over 90 plus global organizations, Climate School is already impacting more than 4 million employees globally today. And what is really interesting is that everybody shares that they learn something useful when they go through Climate School, and they would always like to recommend it to another colleague or another friend and family member to learn what they learned through Climate School. To talk specifically about the kind of content we covered, I'll request to move us to the next slide. So the core offering under AXA Climate School is our flagship product called Climate School, which you see on the left-hand side. This is what is being used by a majority of our 90 plus global organizations today. Under Climate School, we solve for three things. Number one, as everybody else on the panel has emphasized, it is very important to bring everybody on the same page about what is the science behind climate, what is happening with our ecology, and how is it impacting society. So the first thing that we talk about is really the science behind climate change. However, we also emphasize the importance of acting both in your individual capacity, which is in your choices of clothing, housing, transportation, etc., which has an impact on your emissions, as well as ecological footprint. And thirdly, most importantly for businesses, we also give employees the toolkit to understand what they need to do within the scope of their specific functions. So here you see as an example, we tackle the topic of how does a procurement professional need to act on climate change? What are the different things they need to do? Similarly, there are modules for marketing, for HR, for technology, and so on. So every part of your corporate team will have something to learn about what they can do in their day-to-day jobs. On the right-hand side are some of the other newer products that we are coming up with in response to what organizations are telling us they need to learn more about, which is what will be the decarbonization journeys of specific sectors. So you see some examples of agri-food business, oil and gas industry, etc. And to emphasize the fact that expertise is very important to us. So we actually collaborate with academicians, subject matter experts, industry experts in coming up with these modules. We also are designing products around helping de-jargonize the climate regulation space, which is evolving very, very fast. So while we do have a product today in de-jargonizing the EU taxonomy on climate regulations, we will soon also be undertaking this for other geographies as well. And lastly, we have the capability to work with specific businesses to understand what challenges they encounter within the scope of their industry, their business priorities, etc. And so we can do really custom development of training modules, which you can roll out at scale as well. The idea behind this is AXA Climate has really brought in expertise of our in-house climate scientists, data scientists, and our network of subject matter experts, as well as married that with very strong pedagogy design. So this is micro-learning asset library that we've created, which is over 150 such learning modules of 5 to 8 minutes each on different topics that you can roll out at scale. My last slide, if we can move to it, we'll talk to you about how you can essentially, all of it is white labeled. We are accessible, I should emphasize, we are accessible in over 8 languages globally, and we're adding Japanese to the catalog this quarter as well. So soon all of our content is going to be accessible in Japanese subtitles and voiceovers as well. And ultimately, when organizations roll this out, this kind of take on, the product takes on the branding and the credentials and context of your organization. So your people ultimately experience this as a sustainability academy that's for your organization. That's it for now. I look forward to answering any questions that the audience may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalmalee. Yes, each one of these tools could have a great impact on a company's sustainable directive. Please submit your questions in Q&A box to be ready for the panel session soon as we start. Okay, let's now hear from one company who actually has used the tool first introduced, Climate Fresk. Yohei Mozumi-san from NYK. Would you please tell us how your company will use Climate Fresk?
Yes, thank you, Minami-san, for my introduction, and thank you for giving us a time to introduce NYK ESG promotion. Good afternoon, all. My name is Yohei Mozumi. I am captain and assistant manager in NYK line, in charge of NYK decarbonization strategy. Next, please. Yep. Today I'm going to present 2 topics today: introduction of NYK Group ESG management and first step for decarbonization. Next, please. Before we get to those topics, let me introduce my company, NYK, briefly. The company name is Nippon Yusen Kabushiki Gaisha. It is well known as NYK in shipping industry. It was established in 1885, and NYK Group main activities are container shipping and logistics business, which include air cargo transportation, bulk shipping business, such as iron ore carriers, car and truck carriers, and liquefied natural gas carriers. NYK has approximately 35,000 employees globally and operate around 650 vessels. In recognition of our environmental sustainability effort, NYK has been A-listed on CDP since 2019, and NYK has also been listed on various ESG stock indexes. Next, please. Yeah, next, please. Yes, NYK began its ESG management in 2021. CEO promoted ESG management strongly in recognition of the importance of contributing to the resilient and sustainable global environment, and its recognition of our customers' base increasingly seeking an ESG-centric provider. NYK Group ESG management function seeks to balance both economic and ESG ambitions, that is promoting a strategy that aims at maximize earnings while also achieving the company's environmental sustainability goals. As a result, NYK has transformed into sustainable solution provider, creating new value for our clients and partners. Next, please. In order to incorporate ESG yardstick into individual operations, NYK assigned ESG navigators to all departments as a platform to advance ESG management. ESG navigators create an ESG action plan in consultation with managers. The plan is then shared with department members while encouraging vigorous exchange of opinions. Navigators then cultivate these ideas of ESG management through the discussions and share the ideas with managers. The navigators' active initiatives are the key for promoting ESG management in NYK Group. Next, please. NYK has announced a target of net zero emission by 2050 for ocean-going businesses. Actually, this is very high ambition, but we must achieve the target. Unfortunately, global warming will continue based on our current effort. And to stop that, we need to understand both the cause of global warming and how to mitigate the global warming. Next, please. This slide shows the total of NYK's CO2 emission in 2021. The total industrial CO2 emissions was 34 billion tons in 2021, and the transport industry emitted 21%, which is about 7 billion tons. International maritime shipping emitted 11.4% in the transportation industry. NYK Group emitted 12 million tons of CO2 in 2021, which comprised 1.4% of international maritime shipping. That means NYK's CO2 emission covers 0.03% of the world industrial emissions. As you see, well, NYK is huge CO2 emitter. So we are now making all our effort to develop zero emission vessels. Next, please. And also to assist NYK employees' understanding of climate change risks and countermeasures, NYK is preparing to hold a Climate Fresk workshop. It's very soon. At beginning the stage, only selected employees like ESG navigators are taking the course, but we hope to expand participation in the future. Ms. Louise explained the details of Climate Fresk very well in the beginning of the webinar, so I will not explain it right now, but I took the workshop in February as trial, and I was really impressed with the variable information related to climate change in the workshop. And these 4 points benefit for Climate Fresk. Firstly, focusing on the cause and the consequence of climate change. And secondly, interactive open conversation workshop. Thirdly, the material are based on IPCC 6 report. And finally, the workshop strengthens collaboration among the participants. I'm really excited for Climate Fresk workshop to become a part of our official company's training. Yep, that is all. Thank you for the time. And please ask any question without any hesitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mozumi-san. Yes, it is very great to hear such a strong case study in Japan. Now, after all of those different tools were introduced, I wonder which one you are most interested in. In this next poll, you can choose multiple answers. So let's wait for a minute. Okay, so we have many answers, and someone is looking for something else. I hope you will get more information after during the Q&A session, and then you will eventually like to take any one of those tools. And yes, Climate Fresk tutorials. Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, so well, if you'd like to hear more about it, please put your question in the Q&A box, because it is now time for our panel Q&A moderated by my colleague Emily Jones.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Jones. I'm a senior sustainability consultant with Codo Advisory, and I will be moderating the panel for today's Q&A session. To begin with, I'd like to ask all of our panel participants to please turn on your camera so that the audience can see you and so we can have an engaging discussion. All right. Thank you, everyone. First of all, thank you, everyone, for joining and presenting your services and your solutions today for the sustainability and corporate climate literacy challenges within Japan. We really appreciate your contributions and what your individual services all add to the conversation. They each sort of fit a different niche, and I think that makes them really unique and able to work together to create incentive for Japan to change. But we are talking about a Japanese context here. And so I wonder if each different panelist who presented a solution today, Mozumi-san, I will ask you a question afterwards, but for all the other panelists, if you could tell me a little bit about how your solution is geared towards the Japanese market specifically, and why it is suitable for Japanese clients to use. So with that question, I guess we'll start in the order that the presentations happened. So Louise, would you please kick it off?
Yes, thank you. So for Climate Fresk, the thing is that there are lots of interactions, And often people might be afraid that it is difficult for people to engage conversation. And also I talked about sharing feelings, which is not very usual, not very usual in Japan. But as we managed to create a very kind of safe space, so from the beginning, we tell people that we are going to talk. And because it is a game, people easily start to talk and share what they think, share their knowledge. So when we arrive at the sharing feelings, when we arrive at the state where we share feelings and share ideas, it's easier because people are already they already have in mind that they can talk freely. But also because, of course, it might be intimidating to share in front of everyone, we try to create small groups when we have to talk and when we have to think about actions or feelings to make sure that everyone can talk. And we do that, but not always in front of everyone. So we still do the workshop, the workshop, but it's done a little different way. So that's what I would say for Untitled in Japan.
Thank you very much. That's a very creative solution to still be able to have every aspect of the Climate Fresk workshop, but gear it towards the Japanese mentality. Thank you. So to move on to our next presenter, Gabriel with 2 tons. Could you explain to us how 2 tons is suitable for the Japanese context?
Yes, thank you. So at 2 tons, we're beginning to our main market now is France, but we're beginning to go abroad, and so we're developing different languages for the workshop. So now it's available in English and not in Japanese yet, but we're going to work with Codo Advisory to add Japanese soon as possible. And for the Japanese market, I think as Louise said, it's really it was inspired by the Climate Fresk, so we also try to keep the good points of the Climate Fresk and create a collective exchanges and collaboration. And for 2 tons, it's like we have 2 moments we'll alternate 2 moments for the whole workshop. Moments when you are alone as a participant and you think of what you want to change for yourself, and also moments when you want to talk with others to take decisions as a group for the whole society. And I think, I think it's really adapted also to visualize the way from now to the objective. I think in Japan, a lot of companies have announced their objective towards carbon neutrality, but sometimes it can seem hard to visualize the whole way or the action plan until the objective. And that's really the purpose of 2 tons, to start from where we are now, visualize our carbon footprint now, and see where we want to go and how we can go there and what we need to change to go there. So it's really a good help to plan your strategy.
Thank you so much. That actually really aligns quite well with what we've seen with Codo Advisory, where a lot of Japanese companies are setting goals and they have an idea of where they want to go, but they don't know how to get there. And so this idea of putting in place a plan and being able to visualize how your actions align with your goals is really quite powerful. So thank you for that. Moving on to our next solution provider, Adrien with MyCO2. Could you please give us a little bit about how MyCO2 has been adapted to the Japanese context? It seems very localized to each individual person's CO2 emissions. So I'm looking forward to what you have to say.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, great question. Actually, yeah, cultures and behaviors are very different in every country, right? With MyCO2, we have taken the time to translate the tool entirely in Japanese, so it is accessible from now in Japanese. But translation is not everything. What we truly want to do is localization. Localization means that the data set behind the engine, the tool, the calculations, and the data and the localization of the behavior of the day-to-day habits have to be personalized to each country. right? So we have translated it, but we are taking the time, and it's not a finished product. We are improving the product day after day right now, where we have first modified the questionnaire, which is following a day-to-day habit of an individual to fit more of the Japanese day-to-day life. That was the first thing we did, and we are happy with the first version that we are releasing on the market today. And the data set that is behind. So as of now, MyCO2 is already adapted to the national data sets of carbon footprint. So we have implemented the emissions that are specifically designed for the Japanese market. It is not yet regionalized. We know that there are a lot of differences between regions in Japan in terms of energy emissions. So the first version is based on a national average. However, in the future version that will come in a couple of months, we will have a regionalized data set for emissions. So yeah, it's a great question, and really I think for all the tools that we are talking about today, because we are all complementary in this search of education, we need to have more and more tools that are fitted to the local culture and the local language. And so I really I'm very happy that all those tools together with MyCO2 are converging towards translation and localization for thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to hear that you're taking that localization approach, because it's something that is so important in terms of how your actions and how your daily life does impact your CO2 carbon footprint. So thank you for that. Finally, from our tool providers, Shalmalee, could you give us some comments on how AXA Climate School is being geared towards a Japanese audience?
Sure, thanks for the question, Emily. AXA Climate School by design is a product that's meant for scale. And so for us, primarily, it is a question of whether the best practices and the guidance that we are sharing is first and foremost, is it inclusive of the realities of all of the people that we are trying to talk to. So when we work with global organizations, their workforce is spread across very different kind of contexts and very different environments, from Europe to the US to the Asia Pacific. And so while much of the regulations tend to be very strict in EU and kind of the thinking starts from there, when you're building a global proposition, it is extremely important for us that we build something that is inclusive. So number one, since last year, it has been my personal priority. So I had the Asia Pacific operations for AXA Climate School. And so our goal has been to kind of ensure not just featuring case studies and expertise from across the Asia Pacific in our modules, so that it is not a fully different version that you see in Asia Pacific, but it's to ensure that the best practices and the right kind of models that you're learning from are not just from a specific region that you're kind of not really exposed to. So that's number one priority for us, to make the product inclusive of everybody's cultural realities and contexts. And the second aspect, of course, since we deploy this at scale, it's very important that the language accessibility is provided. So that's been on our roadmap, and like I shared, that's something that we're actively working on this quarter. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm very, very happy to hear that the best practices and models from the Asia Pacific region are also being translated to the European and US regions, because I know that two-way bilateral communication is something that's often missing from our climate literacy discussion. So I'm glad to hear that that's happening with AXA Climate School. Thank you very much. Finally, Mozumi-san from NYK, I would like to get to you. We've talked a lot about the different tools and services that can help companies to improve their climate literacy, but NYK has taken a lead in developing internal climate literacy. Can you tell us a little bit about why you chose to start the ESG Navigator program?
Thank you for the question. Why we start the ESG Navigators program is that is actually we are thinking we need to have key person in each department. We need to have key person in each department to promote the navigate ESG promotions. Not only from the top down, from the general manager or managers, but also we need from the bottom up. That is very important things to familiarize ESGs, because ESG is not only environment, society, and governance. It's also very important things. So that's the reason why from all the aspect, we need to understand the ESG from all the aspects. So that's the reason why we set the ESG navigators in each department. And this is still a new system, so it's somehow still working, but we need to do more like concrete activities with navigators and with other employees. So actually this ESG management promotion group now turned to be a ESG management promotion headquarters. So now we have more people to organize like these events. So we are more promote ESGs in the NYK all over the group in the world.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear that with NYK, it's not just a top-down approach, but also coming from that bottom-up side and sort of meeting in the middle.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot that can be learned from both sides in that case.
And this climate, this we chose Climate Fresk, luckily. So we are now really try to expand this education together with Codo Advisory. So we are very grateful for that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your trust. I know that we are out of time now, so unfortunately I must end the Q&A session here. Any questions that were unable to be answered during this time, we will be sure to follow up with after the webinar. So please continue to reach out, continue to send any questions that you have, and we will be sure to get back to you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you to all of our panelists for your informative questions or your informative answers, and for your great presentations.